Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to discuss with you the subject of the best legal structure for token offerings. So we're at a point in time where there's lots of crypto projects, and the way that crypto projects typically get launched is they do some sort of a token offering. Okay, so there's lots of different ways you can list these and you can distribute them, etc. And I'll talk about that in a second. But very often you need some sort of a legal structure. Now it's questionable, in kind of this world of DAOs and all this kind of thing, do you actually need a legal structure? But I think there's often a practical reason to have one. And so I've had a variety of different clients who were helping kind of figure that out, figure out, how to plan it from a tax standpoint and from an operational standpoint, from a liability standpoint, etc. So there's a number of different situations, and no one size fits all, but I'm going to give kind of the basic kind of couple principles behind such a structure that might be useful for you, and a few kind of warnings if you are wanting to go down that road. I think it's an interesting way to start a business, and it gives a variety of different flexibility that you might not get in some other situations. So we will dive into that now. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, nail the notification bell, hit the little all notifications. Really helps us out. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like help with these subjects of international tax optimization and building international corporate structures, forming companies, opening bank accounts, getting residencies, citizenships, figuring out where to relocate, relocating to someplace, banking, etc., please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Okay, so let's see here. A few different things. First of all, why do you need one of these structures? Well, very often there's different ways that you'll end up launching a token. Okay, so I'm going to give you sort of the three most common, although there are many variations, etc. So we have launching on an exchange, right? And whether this happens initially or later on, that can happen. So you can have an initial exchange offering, right? Which can also just include, an exchange listing. And so that might be a reason why you need a legal structure. Second of all, you have venture capitalists who you may be dealing with. And very often you'll have something called a SAFT there. So you can have a token purchase agreement, but you can also have a SAFT, which is called a sale agreement for future tokens. Okay, so it's a very common legal structure, which is adapted from something called a SAFE agreement, which is kind of, you can go and check out kind of common templates from Y Combinator. Which is where an entity isn't formed yet, but you're writing up an agreement for future equity. Right? So this would be the case with a SAFT, and so you would need some sort of legal entity or somebody who can actually sign it and deal with it accordingly. Okay, so that's the next piece. The third is some sort of an IDO, ICO type structure. Okay, so where you have a kind of a public sale where people can purchase it. Maybe you launch on a DEX, maybe you just have people buy privately, maybe you're using some sort of a launch pad. There's a variety of different ways you can distribute. There's an ISO now, original stake offering, so there's or initial stake offerings, right? So a variety of different ways that you can do this, right? But the point is, you're going to have some tokens and you're going to distribute them. And as soon as you do that, you start to run into possible concerns such as, well, are you in a situation where this is a security and you have to deal with agencies like the SEC, right? That's a little bit of a concern. Then you've got things like, so that'd be like, is it a security token? And there's something called the Howey test that you can look at, okay? So you've got something like that. Then you have, the possibility of things like KYC and AML. Should you be having KYC done on your investors? Should you be doing AML on them? What's the deal in that respect? Will you have to open bank accounts? Then there's going to be like, once the money comes in, you're going to have to pay people conceivably. And so what's the process there? How is that managed, etc. So lots of different kind of cases that could be involved here. Now, I'm going to make kind of the assumption from the beginning that it's just plain bad to deal with Americans when it comes to this kind of stuff. So generally speaking, you probably want to exclude Americans from your token offering. The most common thing to do is to blacklist the IPs when you're doing one of these sorts of things, as well as have kind of a thing where they have to make a declaration that they're not American or relevant. Some people also would exclude China. Some are excluding Canada now. There's various different parts of the world you would maybe exclude: Afghanistan, Syria, places like that, right? So you can do that. You can block some IPs, and you can ask people to make a declaration, and that's like gives you some degree of protection. But you do potentially have some liability that you will face here. So the bottom line is, in most cases, it's smart to form a legal entity. And from a liability standpoint, because of the fact that you're in a situation where, you're not you don't want to take on a bunch of risk and you want to kind of separate things out, it's usually best to separate out legal entities. So generally you would want an entity that does the token offering itself, and this would be different than the entity which does other functions. Okay, so that could be a marketing entity, right? There may be an entity that says, it's given a right to go and market the token, and it's being paid some sort of a fee for what comes in. Perhaps you're in a situation where you have some sort of a technical company which will employ developers, etc., and kind of do the contracting. And so this is where actually there's probably banking that takes place. There's probably a conversion from crypto to fiat. You're in a situation where there's real operations taking place, right? And you want to separate that out so that those operations are not negatively affected by anything that might happen to the core token offering entity. Okay. Now, obviously, you might be in a situation where you need to do something in the US, that's going to change things, etc. So you may also find, for some reason, that there may be some practical piece involved that requires you to be connected to one jurisdiction or another, something related to banking or something like that. However, at the moment, probably the go-to thing is a Panama Foundation. Okay, so you can get a Panama Private Interest Foundation, and this can be done quite securely. With one of the main reasons why people don't use it is they don't have what's called the VASP rules that are causing issues for you. If you look at jurisdictions like Cayman Islands, they've got a ton of regulations right now, so it's kind of a pain in the ass. It used to be that BVI was pretty good, but BVI has introduced some new rules. I think it was early 2020, something like that. And so again, that's made them a little bit less attractive. Some people talk about places like Estonia, Malta. In practice, not so great for this sort of thing. Sometimes you may do something out of Singapore, and there may be some practical reasons why that gets used for other things. But usually what I would say take your token offering entity and you put it in someplace like a Panamanian foundation, right? That can be kind of that core piece, and it's going to take on some liability by what it's doing, right? Hopefully you operate with best practices, and you can consult some security lawyers and figure out how that applies to you. But then that entity is going to pay another entity, and that other entity could be formed in a variety of places, right? Maybe it's the UK, maybe it's the US, maybe it's Estonia, maybe it's Singapore, or Cyprus, or who knows where, Romania. And that entity is the one that actually employs developers. So crypto would be paid into the foundation. The foundation is then going to pay crypto to these other entities. These other entities will then convert the crypto to fiat to make fiat payments, and will have normal banking. So that's the basic concept that you would use in one of these situations. Again, it depends case by case on where people are located, and you have to determine, what kind of equity you're getting, and is there tax consequences around that, and how's money coming into you, and so on and so forth. But this basic model should serve you pretty well. Just separate out the actual operational functions from the offering function. Try and keep the banking away from that entity that's doing the offering, and have the entity structured in some sort of a jurisdiction that's going to make it as low hassle as possible for you if you're going to set one of these up. So I hope that helps. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. If you don't, please tell me why in the comments. If you have questions, put them in the comments. Otherwise, reach out to me if you have something specific to you in kind of a situation that you're trying to do something. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com. I will see you guys on the next video.